Okay. Common problem when it comes to managing trails, and certainly managing the flow of water off those trails, is the issue of berming at the side of the trail. The action of tyres repeatedly coming down and through this slight corner and on a slight off camber has been pushing organic material to the edge of the trail. The middle of the trail is lower than the edge of the trail. A little barrier, a little dam has formed up, and it's holding all this water. Now the vast majority of this is just organic build-up. Leaves grow, leaves fall off, leaves rot down and build up that organic base each year. If you keep on top of your trails and blow them down and keep the leaves off them, you can reduce the organic build-up. But on a long wild trail like this, which stretches for some miles, chance of finding someone with a blower that wants to come down here too regularly is going to be quite a hard task to deal with. But what we can do is just very quickly is just to take this little lip off here. All this little lip where tyres have been pushing in here and pushing dirt up is just holding water on the trail. The longer the water sits on the trail, the softer the ground underneath becomes, the more it gets churned up, the more loose stuff gets pushed to the edge, and so the cycle of decline continues. So what we're looking at here is just removing this little edge and seeing how much of this water we can make sure that it flows off the trail, and just decluttering the side of the trail and getting rid of this berm. Now when we look down this trail, it pretty much for its duration has got a little bit of a deberming issue, which is quite a big task. The worst case scenario is here, where water from this point is running down the trail to this low point. So making sure we deberm this low point at the very least is a really good idea. Whenever we're dealing with a trail, we want to dig up, not dig down into the trail. So we use an action sliding across and through and up, rather than down into the trail disrupting. Anything we disrupt is not going to compact as well once it's been disrupted. So a digging up technique is a really useful one for making sure that you don't make more work for yourself down the road. We might like to find out where those low points are before we start, just to check to see if there are any particularly large low points where we might have to go beyond the deberming and look at what we call a rolling grade dip. We're going to look at those later as well. But for now, let's just have a look, see what we can do in terms of just deberming does in terms of draining water off the trail. So digging up, I'm just going to go through and across. We're just lowering that edge all the way through and losing our organic away from the trail itself. Just taking that edge out, and you can see already the water's trying to get away and off the trail. It really wants to get down that hill, and as soon as we can lose this little lip at the edge, we're already starting to see that water make its way off the trail. Because it's off the trail, this berm, we don't need to get down to the mineral soil. We aren't going to dig miles down through the organic. We're just taking off that build up at the edge. And already the water from further down and up at this end is starting to make its way down this edge of down to this end of the low point on the trail, and we can just make sure that edge is away and any spoil isn't then causing a dam further down the slope, which will then back up. So we'll lose some of this and tidy this up a little bit. Straight away that water's running away. Underneath we've got some nice good mineral. Hard pack, hard wearing. Just making sure we get that water off is going to preserve it and keep the trail bed nice and solid. So just by deberming that edge here, you can see a lot of organic has been moved away to the sides. We're going to deal with the visual impact of that in a minute. But we're down to mineral pretty much. There's a little bit of water sitting on there. And ideally, it's nice if all the water flows off. But with water management, it's about how long it's there for and how deep it is. Now that water's quite shallow, very thin film across a wider area, it's likely to dry off very much quicker. So I'm not saying that you're never going to get water on your trails, that's an impossibility. But it's how long it sits there and over how great an area and to what depth. Here, we've managed to, just by deberming, we've managed to get rid of most of that moisture. There's a little bit of organic build up in here, a little bit of the mud just still sitting on top of the harder mineral soil underneath. And I can just bring this edge down a little bit using a technique called a rolling grade dip to get rid of the rest of the water and make sure any further water flows off the trail across a wider area. We're going to look at that technique of installing what we call a rolling grade dip further up the trail, where we've got a prime example of how one type of management, maybe a short-term fix, doesn't work in the long run, but a little bit of knowledge goes a long way in making sure that that problem is erased for a longer period of time. Don't get me wrong, these problems are going to come back seasonally, but a little bit of stitching time. This has taken me no more than 5-10 minutes absolute tops to get that water off, and already we can see that the trail itself underneath is drying off. Of course, I don't want to leave this edge all like messy and muddy and horrible. As your rider comes down the trail, this is going to be a bit of a distraction, a visual performance cue that they're going to look towards. We don't want them drifting wide, and we certainly don't want our trails to be unsightly mud baths at the edge just because the trail surface itself is nice. But deberming is a really common problem. The need to deberm is a real common problem across a wide number of trails. It's a real quick fix, low tech, low energy to a degree, and only requires the trusty spade.
Yep.
So clearly we need to continue this process down this trail. It's a long-standing legacy trail. It's been ridden for years and very much left in a state of nature, really, or nature plus a bit of wheel time on top of it to see what that does. But you can see it's a little bit concave all the way down. So removing the outer edge and reinstalling that crossfall on the trail makes a massive, massive difference. But the job isn't done, as I alluded to earlier, and one of the big factors here is a little trick we use all the time, which is camouflaging our work. We don't want riders drifting, we don't want trail creep. What we want to do is define the edge of the trail. You'll find some willing volunteers will happily go down a trail placing sticks all the way down the side of the trail, or logs down the side of the trail to demark it. IMBA refers that as to showing your grandma the way home. The problem that's identified with that is those logs themselves can quickly build up moisture against them. They can quickly act as a dam, and although you're defining the edge of the trail, you're actually holding water on there. So we're going to use a far more subtle visual technique for demarking the edge of the trail, and that is to use a little bit of camouflage, and everything we need is right around us here. So for the section of trail we've just completed, we're just going to gather up some leaves. Luckily there's a boundary ditch up there, a very good collecting point for leaves, but you can see they're all around us. Now we're not looking at making piles, we're just looking at a subtle shake just to demark the trail a bit more, just to make sure that we've got a little bit of a visual edge to the trail, but not a physical one. Any physical edge you put on a trail can become a hazard to riders, whereas this visual one will just push riders back to the centre of the trail, and it obviously covers up some of the mulch that we've moved away as well. So I'm going to carry on, again, probably about a 5-minute job just to gather up some leaves, demark the edge of this trail, and you can see that only the very small amount of organic that's left I can scrape off. It's going to dry out quick, and the next rain that comes is going to roll off the side of the trail through the camouflage and away. This bit of trail is pretty firm underneath, but it was just that bermed edge that was spoiling the ride for most people and giving you your foot the odd cold bath every time you ply through it. So trail freshly debermed, mulch spread out down the downslope away from the trail, it's not going to fall back on, and a little bit of camouflage, and this section here that was collecting quite a bit of water and spoiling the ride for a lot of people, or forcing them to take ever wider lines and get that trail creep going, which we're going to look at later. All of a sudden water's going to run off, we're down to mineral, no organic, the edge has been taken away, so that cross camber that was built into the trail initially is back and reinstalled, and we're good to go. There's just about another 500 metres to do.